Hello and good day everyone. We are from Group 6. We'd like to present about case study which is entitled Yokkaichi Asthma that happened in Japan. My group mates are Manikandan Alagasami, Siti Nur Antasha Suhaimi, one is me Fadila Azmi, and myself Pavitra Chandramohan. Without further ado, let me start off with the introduction to the Yokkaichi Asthma. In many regions of the world, industrial and urbanization are presently advancing at breakneck speed, causing air and water pollution concerns. As a result, in order to preserve the Earth's ecology, environmental investment must take precedence above productivity efficient alone. The findings report in the other studies indicate the need of anti-pollution efforts, examining the expenses suffered by Japan's worst level of air pollution, particularly in Yokkaichi. Air pollution damage was extremely important during the construction of the petrochemical complex. Yokkaichi firms have made a significant investment effort since then, and the harm has rapidly lessened. This study analyzes time series data for atmospheric sulfur oxides level to the trace Yokkaichi firm's environmental facility investment expenses as well as concern atmospheric recovery and reduction in the compensation costs. Then, then a simulation model, the effect of modifying the quantity and pace environment investment on damage cost is investigated. As a result, the trade-off between pollution harm and pollution mitigation investments made by petrochemical enterprises in Yokkaichi, as measured by the degree of the pollution, can be estimated. I'll pass to the next person.
Okay, my name is Ismi Fadlila binti Azmi, and I will proceed to explain about the summary of this case study. So, this Yokkaichi Asthma is a major health crisis that occurred in the city of Yokkaichi in Mie Prefecture, Japan. So, this Yokkaichi Asthma was actually started from an incident of respiratory disease by early 1960s, and then it was lingered until 1972. So, it was said to be the four big pollution disease in Japan, and it was caused from the burning of crude oil and chemicals from petrochemicals processing facilities and refineries. So from these sources, it released large amount of sulfur dioxide and other pollutants into the atmosphere, and then it lead to the serious smog and caused numerous respiratory related problems to local residents. So in early 1960s, the first disease that has been noticed among the residents of Yokkaichi were chronic obstructive pulmonary disease (COPD), and also bronchial asthma, and then where it caused from the air pollution from sulfur oxide. And then after that, it became known as Yokkaichi Asthma, or also Yokkaichi Zensoku in Japanese. So one of the reasons the case is prolonged is because of the petrochemical industries that continue to expand. And then this Yokkaichi Asthma was not only give effect to human, but also it caused adverse effect to environment.
Additional information, Yokkaichi is the most populated city in my prefecture, producing 40% of Japan's petroleum as well as wide range of other products such as porcelain, automobiles, textiles, and chemicals. Its successful economy is due to the port, which was created in 1872 and it was Grand Modern City status in 1897, ensuring its survival. Following World War II, the city grew up more dependent on chemical manufacturing and plants that sprung up all over the place. Mr. Furukawa is the first victim died of pulmonary emphysema at Shohama near Complex Number 1 as shown in Figure 1. Yokkaichi City began providing free medical care to victims in 1965, 18% at the first. Up until 1981, 12 people resided at Isuzu, Japan's first free medical care system. Then Mr. Kira, 75 years old, a pollution designed victim, committed air-down suicide in 1966 because of the asthma and financial hardship. Figure 2 shows the incidence in elder citizen, and Figure 3 shows the Yokkaichi Athens environmental standard under 0.017 ppm per year of sulfur dioxide were obtained from the Journal of Materials Science An Engineering History of Yokkaichi Asthma and its Anti-Pollution Measures, written by Yukishima Takimoto, Masashi Takahashi, and Hiroshimi Kito, and lastly Takanori Terazawa. I'll pass to the next person.
Okay, so for the major problems, Yokkaichi asthma is largely associated with sulfur dioxide, a major component of air pollution in Yokkaichi. In the 1950s, a number of more petrochemical companies were added in response to World War II demand and the post-war recovery efforts, giving rise to a refinery complex called the Yokkaichi Combinato. As, industri- as industrialization grew, citizens took pride in it, but their enthusiasm waned when air pollution and noise pollution led to health problems. A research group was sent by the government in 1953 to discover the cause, but no action was taken. Instead, the petrochemical complex was expanded. Researchers documented a strong correlation between airborne sulfur dioxide concentrations and asthma in children, and chronic bronchitis in people over 40 as soon as citizens began complaining about breathing difficulties. Yet, a second industrial complex opened in 1963 despite this knowledge. Yokkaichi's Sozu district had an eightfold higher concentration of sulfur dioxide than the rest of the city. Sulfur dioxide acts to contract the bronchial smooth muscle based on airway irritation, which cause bronchial wall thickening and fibrosis. Inhaling, inhaling sulfur dioxide can negatively affect the respiratory system in the long run. The early life exposure to the air pollutant in utero and during the first year can cause chronic inflammatory disorder of the airway that causes childhood asthma. Okay, so for the alternative solutions to these major problems, in 1960, Yokkaichi systematically started measuring concentrations of air contaminants and performed health examinations on inhabitants. However, when the fishing industries in Yokkaichi began to collapse in spring 1960, the government finally issued a 100 million yen settlement that was to be divided up and distributed by Yokkaichi fishing unions. But the settlement did nothing about the source of pollution. Okay, so for the first alternative is when the 1968 Air Pollution Control Law was enacted, replacing the Smoke and Soot Regulation Law. This law, enacted in 1962, marked the beginning of Japan's environmental restoration. In Soot and Smoke Regulation Law, Yokkaichi became an official target area based on the Survey Council's investigation. However, sulfur dioxide pollution was not reduced, most notable through the suicide of confection shop owner Otani Kazuhiko, who wrote a note blaming the bad air for his death. Through this law, taller smokestacks were built, but they simply spread the pollution over a wider area and did not help alleviate the health issues. The air pollution law control led to the implementation of a flue gas desulfurization processes for all emissions, which gradually led to health improvement in the local populace. Okay, so for the second alternative solution, is in 1964, Yokkaichi City tentatively introduced a system for bearing medical payments at public expenses to support inpatients with advanced pollution-related diseases. Decisive enforcement of the above system was started in May 1965 as Japan's earliest attempt, covering not only serious cases but those with lighter symptoms derived from air pollution. Okay, so for the third alternative solution is the city plan, a separation of petrochemical works from residential districts, and among other town planning initiatives, Yokkaichi established green buffer areas and residential areas. And the fourth one is, according to the Sioux Court of Yokkaichi, 6 petrochemical companies were ordered to pay compensation for pollution-related illnesses in 1972. And in 1974, the Pollution-Related Health Damage Compensation Law was enacted that the payment and compensation have to be made for damage and income loss to certified victims, a legal obligation. Okay, last alternatives are in 1969, the severity of the environmental problems prompted the establishment of a system of regulations for the ground level concentration of sulfur dioxide, which is K values. In Japanese, K stands for Kankyokigen, which means environmental standard. Following that, regulations for total discharge amounts or total emission control was introduced in 1972, setting a precedent for Japan as a whole. So the alternative solutions and its advantages and disadvantages. The first approach to overcome the problem is the enactment of air pollution control in 1968 to be replaced with the soot and smoke regulation law because the air pollution caused by SO2 did not decline satisfactorily. In contrast with the soot and smoke regulation law, which only regulated emission of pollutants, the air pollution control law imposed control of ground concentration of pollutant known as K-value control. The advantages of the first alternative is this system encouraged private enterprises to install smokestacks, thereby successfully reducing pollution problems due to SO2 in the vicinity of the complex. Consequently, the morbidity rate of respiratory diseases has rapidly declined, but ironically, heightened stacks had spread pollutants over more extended areas. Okay, so as we can see, there's the graph, which is the changes in sulfur dioxide concentration associated with the use of tall smokestacks. Okay, so for the next approach is the medical aid by Yokkaichi City for the relief of pollution-related patients in 1964. This system was intended for pollution-related patients officially recognized by the Pollution-Related Medical Care Screening Board. This city shoulders an amount which cannot be covered by health insurance to alleviate patients from the financial burden associated with medical treatment. The cons of this alternative is that it is a risky challenge, since no legal background to support such efforts had been established on a national basis and the city had to bear all the costs required. As a result of this effort, Yokkaichi environment has greatly improved with a significant decrease in sulfurous acid gas, which is the primary cause of asthma, as we can see in the graph on this slide. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Sami, and I'll continue the conclusion part. So in conclusion, ordinary pollutants such as sulfur dioxide or dilute sulfuric acid mites generated by its oxidation in the atmosphere may be significantly more toxic than the concentrated sulfuric acid mites. Through a chemical balance between sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide immediately discharged into the environment, concentrated sulfuric acid mites are also produced by the combustion of sulfur-containing fuels. This is because the psychological consequence of concentrated sulfuric acid mites must be differ significantly from those of dilute sulfuric acid mites created by atmospheric oxidation of sulfur dioxide. Distinguishing between the two types of acid mites is critical. The fact that the problem of air pollution has been remade, mortality and life expectancy have been negatively affected among Yokkaichi asthma sufferers due to the increased death of respiratory disorders. Why is there environmental ethics is important? First, the ecological consequence protects all creatures from cruelty. Rather, it necessitates a secure and long-lasting temperament in order to coexist peacefully with nature. We pollute our environment due to lack of ecological consequences. Last but not least, I believe that the importance of environmental ethics in today's society cannot be overstated. Insofar as we are living in harmony with nature, we cannot imagine a human life possible in this ecocentric universe apart from the viable environment. To create a viable environment, we must understand the difference between ecological balance and ecological imbalance. Thus, in these terms of environmental ethics, ecological consequences lead to the well-being of all environment and nature. So, next part. So these are our references. So that's all from us. Thank you.